Hi, my name is Jonathan Chalker, and I am an AI and vibe coding enthusiast, and this is my channel, Johnny Demo. I am also an executive leader of a product management team for a national brand with 5,700 locations across the United States, 17,000 employees, and over 2 million customers. My content here is not sanctioned by or affiliated with my employer in any way. All of the coding projects that I share here are of my own creation, done on my own time, and are not the proprietary property of any corporate entity. Okay, with that out of the way, we're going to be doing some early morning coding. It is about 5:30 in the morning right now. That's the reason for the weird lighting. My hope is I'll be able to color correct this a little bit later on. I am excited. This is probably, I don't know if this is going to be a long video or not. I don't have a lot of time. I'm actually headed up to Crystal River to do some scalloping today. Scalloping. So you go out on a boat about, a mile and a half out into the bay. You get out into water that's something maybe, let's call it anywhere between 5 and 10 feet deep. And you snorkel and you go down to the bottom. You find scallops, you get them, you put them in a net, and you collect as many as you can. It's like a great adult Easter egg hunt. If there's a bunch of scallops, it's not too hard to find the scallops and get them. If the scallops are not on the plentiful side, it can actually be pretty challenging to find the scallops. And it's a very exciting and invigorating experience when you find one and you grab them and you put them in the bag. It's the most expensive scallops you're going to ever eat because you're paying for the boat, you're paying for the place to stay while you're up in wherever you're doing scalloping. In my case, it's Crystal River, Homosassa area here in Florida. Going out with some friends. It's going to be a lot of activity, a lot of swimming, a lot of eating, maybe a little drinking. It should be a really good time, and I'm really looking forward to it. But I have a little bit of time early this morning, so I thought I would try to get a little bit of iteration done on 2 of my major projects. We're going to do a little bit of work on the OCR project, and then we're going to do a little bit of work on the recipe extractor project, which was in my last video. Okay, so we're going to turn here to the OCR project. I'm going to talk a little bit about the pipeline here with this OCR project. What it does is it will allow you to upload a document. In my case, these are very specific documents. So I've got this particular project set up to handle driver's licenses, state IDs, and payroll information like a pay stub. Why that might be important, let's say you're in a business like banking, let's say loan underwriting, insurance, things like that. You're generally going to collect these documents. You're going to extract the data off of them. It's going to go into application information or into certain forms. These are things that are very common. Businesses do it all the time. And OCR can be pretty expensive depending on what you're trying to do with it and how much of it you're trying to do. So in my case, this was one project to see how good can I get with OCR extraction at really the lowest cost. Right now, I'm very happy with the cost. I'm getting documents now at somewhere under a penny per document, which is good because you're just paying for the tokens that are going into the AI. I am using Claude 3.7 in this case, but I'm going to be upgrading to 4.0 for this, Claude 4 for this particular app here pretty soon. We might even do it today if I have the time, not sure. And the way this pipeline works is you upload the document. It is going to do some pre-processing, so it's going to trim down to the image. So if you're on a big blank page or a gray page, let's say if you had scanned it in or you had used a copier or something, it's going to trim up to the document. If it's in color, I'm going to go to grayscale. I am then going to use AI to do orientation detection. By the way, this is already coded. This is actually an enhancement session we're going to do here today. It is going to detect the orientation. The AI then sends back an assessment of the orientation. That assessment then goes into OpenCV. And then OpenCV takes the assessment and the projected rotation, executes the rotation. Then I've got an upright and clear image. That is then going to go back into the AI for extraction. That extraction is going to come back to me in a very predefined way. It's going to be a very predefined JSON with very clear field names, attribute names that are going to come back that I'm now able to use in other applications. So I'm going to show you guys what's going wrong. We're going to be messing today with the orientation service. Something's not going right with it, so we're going to essentially debug that, and we're going to see if we can get a better result. So let me start out by showing you what's going wrong. We're going to go ahead and just debug this in its current state. As you see here, we've got it's called beige OCR. I've already done my access code here, so I'm good for the next 46 hours. It looks like that's a common best practice I'm doing right now, is to just put access codes. Those are generally going to be stored in environment variables or something like that. And they'll be temporary codes in most cases, things that I'll use myself or things that I might give to colleagues or friends, people that can go in and use the applications, critique them, give me feedback, things like that. But essentially that just protects against someone seeing one of the videos like this, or just finding it randomly on the web, going in and just running my API calls and generating a bunch of expense, as we talked about in my previous video. In this case, I'm just going to grab, I've got some IDs. So I've got this one here that is a Washington ID, and this is in the proper rotation. So this is a upright ID, and so we're just going to go ahead and do that extraction. I'll show you what the extraction looks like, but then I'll show you one of the problems that I'm running into with regard to the orientation service. So this one's in the proper rotation. I'm going to go ahead and just do the processing on this now. So it says it's processing the document. Before I show you the results of that, I want to show you just really quickly. So I like to be able to quickly, see what the developer prompt is, because sometimes we're changing this prompt. Sometimes the solution to the problem is to make a better prompt. I've got a good effective prompt right now. I don't think this particular fix is going to involve any prompt changes, but just so you know, it's nice to kind of have my prompt available so I can see and review what's going on there. So we've processed the document, and here's my API response. It is a Washington driver's license. This is the driver's license number. This is a sample driver's license, so I got John A. Sample is the name. This is the correct date of birth, the correct street address. It says your city, because again, it's a sample. This is a 5-digit zip code, which is specifically what I asked for, and this is pretty important. In the driver's license itself, it has the 5-digit zip code, but it also has the 4-digit suffix. And so this strips off the 4-digit suffix, exactly what I said. I want the 5-digit zip code here. You have the issue date and you have the expiration date. And these are specifically in formats that I asked for. This is not the format that came off the card. I'm actually specifying a format. You can actually see this in the prompt here, where I've given it, where is this? Trying to find really quickly where I give it the format. Here it is. So I said format dates as month, dash day, dash year. So that is directly right in the prompt. I'm specifying what the output's going to be. So this is a good extraction. I have some things here where it tells me processing details. It says, hey, I did standard processing, which means it didn't detect any HEIC. It didn't detect anything where it had to do some conversion before it actually went in here. It just processed the image as a standard image. And then down here at the bottom, like in my other best practice, which I've said a number of times, it's really cool to be able to just show me the cost of this particular processing. And in this case, this cost me right 0.004854. It tells me the input and it tells me the output calculation, so that I get a total calculation of the cost. This is a best practice. I would hide this obviously if I was doing this live, or actually this particular thing I would probably run as a service, not necessarily something where I'm going to be manually uploading individual documents. What's probably going to happen is you have a high speed scanner, and it's going to put several docs in. Those are going to then probably process through some sort of a service as an API call, which is also then going to be calling APIs. But that's the thinking here, is that you're going to process images at a potentially high volume. And so you have a lot of incentive to keep the cost down as much as possible. OCR services out there can cost 15 cents a document, 50 cents a document, up to $1 a document. So if you can get that cost down, there's a good reason to be doing this type of application. Another thing here is, if I look here in the middle, I've got this sort of show hide the processed image. This is important. This is basically my troubleshooting. This is a troubleshooting step. I want to be able to see exactly what I sent to the AI to do the extraction. So this is after all of the processing that I've already done. And you're going to see why this is important here in a moment, because now we're going to process, like this went in again with the right orientation. This is right side up. And you can see this is nice and clear, right side up. This was no problem for the AI to do this extraction. Let's grab an image that has been oriented differently. So in this case, I'm going to do an image that is 90 degrees clockwise. So it's here, 90 degrees clockwise. It's actually like that. I don't know if that works. Probably getting a mirror image here in the image. But anyway, 90 degrees clockwise. So what it needs to do to correct that, it needs to detect that it's 90 degrees clockwise, send instructions back to OpenCV and tell it to move the image or rotate the image 90 degrees counterclockwise to correct the situation. Let's see how that goes. So I grab this and we are going to go. Okay, so now I have a new extraction. I can see here, driver's license, looks like it's got the right, it looks like it actually did the extraction pretty well. I'm just going to verify these real quick. Second. So it failed on the driver's license number. Yeah, it failed on the driver's license number. The driver's license number is actually WDLABCD456DG. And if you're looking at this here, that is not that. It just filled in, it hallucinated in the 56789. And that's because it actually struggled to do the extraction correctly. And the reason for that is it is still misoriented. And how do I know that? Because I'm going to open it up here and look at what we've got. We've got an upside down image. Why that is it did the rotation wrong. In fact, what I would say here is it appears that I had a 90 rotation. It moved it another 90 clockwise instead of moving it 90% counterclockwise. And that's the problem. So this should be pretty easy to solve, but it just depends. It depends on how much coding logic is here to do, to perform this particular function. Let's hide that. I'm gonna move that down for a second. So now I'm in the code. I already have, there's two services that do this. I've got a document processing service directory, and in there is a number of processing services. And that's different than the AI services where I'm actually doing the AI-based extraction. You can see I've got a service here for Claude. I've got a service here for Gemini, Claude, here's Gemini. And I can add other services here, like other AIs as needed. We're going to be focused again on the image rotation service and the AI orientation service. So the AI orientation service is that my AI is going to, that's Claude is basically determining what is the current orientation and sending back what it thinks is the right correction for that. There are a couple things that could be going wrong here. If you think about it, I'm sending this to Claude to do the orientation detection. Claude could just be failing at the orientation detection. It wouldn't be the first time. I've had some problems with this before where, look, I mean, Claude can work great 90% of the time and fail on 10% of the time. It can happen. Another thing is we could just have something wrong in the instruction that's coming back from Claude. So you could get the orientation right, but then send the wrong instruction back. We could be doing something funky when the orientation correction comes back. We could be doing something funky in the math or something in the logic. They could be jerking this up. And I mean, something could just also be going wrong in OpenCV. So you got several different fail points here. I pulled up my log. So one thing I like about coding with an AI partner is he's pretty good about making sure that there's a fair amount of logging. And you can also ask for more logging if you need. If you put a bunch of logging in, you can set it so you can toggle it more or less depending on whether you're in a development environment or whether you're in a production environment for efficiency. In my case, I'm in a dev environment. I got a lot of logging turned on, which is going to be helpful. So I've got my terminal up here that has my logs. First thing I'm looking is to see that, yeah, did it actually, go to the AI orientation service? It did. I can see that it went here. I can see that I got a 200 response, which is a good API response. As we go here, it even, it tells me how many tokens went in. As we go on further, I'm looking for the command, the correction command that it's giving back. And in this case, it says rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise. That's what it thinks the corrective action is. And that is correct in this case. We should rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise to correct the fact that it is clockwise. And it looks like the determined angle was 90 degrees clockwise. That was the original one. And so if I go down here, I've got a little more explicit rationale. So why is this the command? It says the document appears to be a Washington State ID card that is rotated 90 degrees clockwise. That is correct, which is right. I don't know, right, left in this case, but it thinks it's a right rotation. The text Washington appears to be vertically along the right side. The ID information includes states, numbers, address, fields, all rotated. The signature and all text fields would read normally if the document were rotated counterclockwise. This is the standard layout of an ID card, and the state name and card information in horizontal orientation. So this rationale is a good rationale. It tells it now to do a correction of negative 90 degrees, which seems right. I would expect negative 90 degrees to be counterclockwise. And the rest here is kind of inconsequential. It applied the 90 degree change. So that's interesting. So far, all appears to be what I might expect it to be. So we're going to have to go into the code and see what's going on there. At the same time, I'm going to send a message over to Claude and see what Claude thinks. So first thing is I just told him, hey, I'm picking up this chat after some time. Do you still have the context you need? So there's actually a fair amount of context up above here. In fact, there is a collection of all the files from this particular repository are posted into this chat, but further, like it's almost probably a couple weeks ago, maybe a week ago that I put those up there. And I don't generate a summary for me of the project, which is also another good best practice is anytime you get far along in the process, you probably want to have your AI partner develop sort of the equivalent of a README doc, but essentially a full detailed project summary, so that if you had to switch to a different context or you had to go to a different chat, you could start there and it would provide the files, and now you're picking up mostly from where you left off. It says yes, I have plenty of context. That's essentially the answer that we've got here. So what I've done here is I posted in a snip of the upside down image just for an example, and I posted in the log results. I said, looking at the log here, the AI accurately identified that ID was turned clockwise 90 degrees and also prescribed the right adjustment of negative 90 degrees. However, the image was turned an additional 90 degrees clockwise, resulting in an upside down image. Claude evaluated that, confirmed that yes, I can see the same thing. And here's what it thinks the problem might be. It says there's likely a double inversion in here. So in one of the files here, the image rotation service, there is a negative angle. So whatever's coming through as angle is being turned negative. So we could have a double inversion there. And it says that the quick fix for this is to just remove the negative from the angle. So I'm getting angle as angle is. I'm gonna look at the code a little bit. This sounds right. This sounds like it could be right, but I'm also fairly familiar with the code at this point. This feels like it's suspect. So I'm gonna pop over and look at a few things, and we're gonna go from there. The first thing I did, I found the place that he's talking about. You can see this is right here. Here's where the angle is turned negative. It actually comes in as angle, and then it changes it to negative angle. So it's saying, hey, reverse the angle. That could be right. At some point in the past, I remember doing some similar troubleshooting, or I was doing some reading that OpenCV does have has a reversed logic. So OpenCV, if you do a negative degrees, it sees that as clockwise. And if you do a positive degrees, it sees that as counterclockwise. Anyway, that's from some reading. That was a while back, so I don't know. There's a couple different things that we're doing here, so this could be the problem, or there could be other problems. So I'm just going to dig a little bit deeper. So what we were looking at was the image rotation service, and now I'm in the AI orientation service. And I found this section here where we're basically applying the correction, or setting the correction. And I already see something I don't like. I didn't know why I didn't catch this before. I wasn't paying much more attention. It probably just on a glance looked like it made sense. But if you look here, I've got contains 90 degrees. First of all, it says, does it contain 90? And is it clockwise? We'll then return this. And then here it says contain 90 counterclockwise, then do this. So it's saying set 90 positive or set 90 negative. Set 90 positive for a clockwise correction, set negative 90 for a counterclockwise correction. But I see a problem. And I see two or three logic problems here that I don't like. And so I'm going to verify some of this with Claude. But one thing I see is I believe we have a logic problem here. So this says contains clockwise. Well, the word counterclockwise contains clockwise. And so if I'm coming back with an instruction that says it's a turn at certain degrees and that contains clockwise, well, I'm going to get the same response, whether it's clockwise or counterclockwise, because both of those words, clockwise and counterclockwise, contain clockwise. So I took that code and I put it in and I said, hey, I think we got a problem here with this bit of code. And it did correctly. It said, yeah, I can see something wrong here. And here it is specifically. The issue is the order of conditions of parsing logic. Let me check what's happening. The string is rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise, and it contains both 90 degrees and counterclockwise, and it should return negative 90 degrees. But then it gives me something here that it wants to change, but it argued with itself a little bit. As it gave me that answer, it went and started giving me a new answer. It said, but actually, looking again, it says determine correction angle 90 degrees, which suggests it's hitting the wrong condition. The real issue might be that the method is hitting clockwise condition because counterclockwise contains clockwise. Yes, so it says to change the order and make it more specific. And so that's exactly what we're going to do. We really should check the counterclockwise condition first and then check the clockwise condition. Otherwise, we're going to have duplicate condition, and that would be problematic. I don't know that that is the problem here, but that certainly would be a problem. So let's fix that first. So all I'm going to do here, I'm just going to change the order of these things. And another thing it said, I needed to apply this change both to the 90 degree and the 270 degree. Now check this out. This is also pretty suspect. Why do we have a 270 degree correction, like determination and correction here? Think about that for a moment. 270 degrees, let's just do this. So 270 degrees clockwise is the same thing as 90 degrees counterclockwise. And 270 degrees counterclockwise is the same thing as 90 degrees clockwise. So this is stupid. We don't need this. I wonder if Claude agrees. Let's see. So I said I made that correction. I'm trying it now, but in the meantime, do we really need 270 degrees? Doesn't that overlap with one of the 90 degree variants? You're absolutely right. Yes, of course I am. And you all knew that as you were looking at this as well. 270 degree rotations are redundant and unnecessary. 270 degrees is equivalent to negative 90 degrees. And it says you can just take that out. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So I made those changes and we're just going to go ahead and run this. Let's do the same thing. We'll do the 90 degrees clockwise. Let's see what happens. Look at that. It got it right. Let's do another thing. Let's try the counterclockwise. So this is a counterclockwise image. The extraction looks good. And we're upright. So it looks like that logic was the parsing logic was the issue in this case. I'm going to do a good bit more testing. But there is something I saw that I don't love, and so let's think about this for a minute. Looking back at the code here, we're doing this correction action thing, and we're saying, hey, counterclockwise -90 degrees, which feels right intuitively in the way we think in our human brains. And it says clockwise 90 degrees, and of course we've got 180 degrees in here. And if you remember over here in image rotation service, we have this where it flips it. So it does this one logic where it says -90 for clockwise, for counterclockwise adjustment, 90 for clockwise adjustment. And then we reverse that because we're going to OpenCV, and OpenCV sees things the opposite way. I don't like that though. I'd much rather not be flipping this angle. I want this angled, I think, to stay the same. And I want to apply my corrections in the other place. So in this case, because if you think about it, you're seeing that logic and it's like, okay, this is all good. And then we're just saying, now just reverse that logic. I'd rather have a much more explicit, we're making this correction and this is what that correction means. And that way you see it each correction. So I'm going to say 90 is a counterclockwise correction. And -90 is a clockwise correction. And then I'm not going to reverse here. I think that is actually better logic overall. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and take away that reverse. We're going to go back over here to orientation, and we're going to fix these. So this first one here says counterclockwise. We're going to make that 90. And we'll do the same thing here. We're going to make this a negative. Sorry, I don't have any light on my keyboard here. That's why I'm futzing around trying to find the keys. -90 degrees is a clockwise adjustment in OpenCV. And obviously we don't need to do anything with 180. So now that I've made that adjustment, let's go ahead and run it again and see if our intuitions are right here. So we're going to start with the clockwise. This is misoriented in a 90 degrees clockwise. Our extraction looks good, and we are right side up. Right on. Let's go ahead and do the 90 degrees counterclockwise. So it's just going to do a 90 degrees clockwise correction on this one. And we've got a good extraction, and this should be right side up. And it is. That's good. Now, one thing we haven't tested since any of our changes, we're going to go ahead and do a 180. So this image is upside down, and we'll see how it does with the correction there. It got a good extraction, but sometimes it actually does a pretty decent extraction on an upside down image, but let's see what we got. And we're right side up. So it took my upside down image, it flipped it as we would expect. So at least right now, orientation seems to be going well. So I think we're going to stop here. I'm going to go ahead and update that and deploy that to production. So I've got a good production copy, and then we'll come back and I'll see if we have enough time to maybe make an adjustment on our recipe extraction. But this was good. This was just a relatively simple fix. Sometimes they can get more complicated than this, but in this case, Claude nailed that. First of all, I'm proud of us. we saw the logical issues first, but Claude confirmed them, and then Claude helped us confirm that we're making the right decisions. And sometimes that's a thing. We're learning, right? That's the whole point, is they're actually getting better at coding and understanding some of this logic. I'm proud of myself for seeing that, but I'm also happy that Claude also agreed and we got a good correction here. So that's good. I have to do a little bit of editing work and do a little bit of work on the sound here. So I've decided I do not have time to go and do any iteration on my other application. We're going to call this good for today. I did realize, however, that I need to make a quick change that I forgot to make. So over here, when we made this adjustment to the angle, we had some commentary in here that was talking about how OpenCV rotates in the opposite direction. And it says important, and then we've got this bad logic here. So I'm going to wipe that. I'm going to wipe that content. Even though it's true, we've decided not to reverse the angle here, so I don't want something really confusing in there. Another thing I did is, while I had it in memory that OpenCV reverses these things, and we had commentary in the code that OpenCV reverses these things, I just wanted to double check. So I just went back to Claude and I said, can you find anything online that confirms the way OpenCV interprets the instruction? And so we did a little bit of a deeper research here. It did the web search and it said, perfect, I found clear documentation that confirms that OpenCV rotation direction. And it has that documentation here. And it says it's very explicit, and these are direct quotes. A positive value rotates the image anti-clockwise, while a negative value rotates the image clockwise. And if the angle is positive, the image gets rotated counterclockwise direction. So that's good. I just wanted to confirm. I think that's a good idea, just in case that was a figment of Claude's imagination. But it turns out it's not. We've been able to confirm, and that's a good thing. I'm going to leave this here today. Next time we'll come back. We'll do some iteration on the recipe extraction app. There's 2 or 3 cool things I want to do with it. We'll get started on that. I also believe I'm going to come back and I'm going to have some commentary about the differences between vibe coding and contextual engineering. There's been some buzz out there of like, vibe coding is dead. It's all contextual engineering now. But that's not the case. In fact, both things are very important and they do different things. So I'm looking forward to talking more about that next time we come back. Thank you so much for the time. Happy adventures in vibe coding.